Do you remember how we first met? I was paying for
Yes.
lunch with my card and it was Barclays.
Yeah.
And you said, hey man, why don't you use an Islamic bank?
Yeah, I mean, that's true because, okay, that's a backstory to that, right?
Yeah.
For context, I think that was the year that Monzo blew up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a different time for fintech.
Yes.
Monzo, Revolut, Starling, Chime, Nubank, N26.
Yeah.
All these guys were entering and it was all about blitzscaling
Yeah. Like 90% of startup fail.
in their first year.
Yeah. Who want to take that odds, right?
But we weren't alone. There were a lot of other people
Yes.
trying this at the same time. This was 2019. Why did you think we could do something different to them at the time?
Something different to them. To be honest,
Can we talk about this now?
you are the CEO, man.
If you've gotten to this point of the episode, you deserve to know this. But we will be launching a full digital Islamic banking offering this summer.
Inshallah.
In today's episode, I'm joined by my good friend, co-founder at Kestrl, and our Chief Operating Officer, Daeng Termizi. Daeng and I first met whilst we were doing our MBAs at the University of Cambridge Judge Business School, and we both recognized a huge problem that was happening in the UK, where 5 million people here and 25 million people in the Western world at large who identified like us as Muslims were struggling with Islamic banking. So we thought, could we combine our skills, mine in fintech and strategy, his in Islamic banking, to try and solve this? 5 years later, and here we are with Kestrl, this podcast, and we'll be getting into that story. We're going to be talking about our startup journey as a whole, our hopes for what we want to do at Kestrl, as well as talking about life for founders in the UK versus Malaysia, where Daeng is from. We'll also be debating what a true Islamic economy can and should look like, drawing upon examples from history and imagining what we could do with the assets now and for the future. As always, I'm your host, Areeb Siddiqui, and this is Muslim Money Talk. Before we begin, we actually noticed only about 10% of you are subscribed to the podcast. So if you like what you're listening to and you want to hear more from us and see more things Muslim and money related, then please consider subscribing and, of course, leaving this episode a like and share it with your friends. Leave us a comment or a review, because it really, really does help us out and help more people to find us. Thank you. Now back to the show. Daeng, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And welcome back to the show. This is actually your
Yes.
second appearance, technically.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
And not many people saw that as one of our first episodes, but you and Irfan joined us when I was in KL last summer.
Should watch that.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was a very interesting one. Ali, my brother, who watched the whole thing through, described it as madness, but like in a good way, because
Like the company.
I mean, to our shareholders, it's not that mad, but otherwise good. But how are you doing?
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, feeling the jet lag? You're joining us here in London today.
Not really jet lag. My trick is always take the transit flight, so your body have time to adjust.
To adjust because you're stopping in
Yeah.
Qatar or
Yes,
Dubai or somewhere.
yeah.
So
And you have to wake up and you readjust the sleep time. Right?
yeah, instead of doing the non-stop. I've done 13 hours before to Malaysia. It's rough. That's a really rough flight.
I don't want to do that.
So
anymore.
I think this will be a really interesting chat, because a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs or they want to be in the future, and we've gone through it and we've been doing it for 5 years, alhamdulillah. Sometimes I wonder how we're still here, because if you remember, our original plans are very different to what we're doing now to an extent.
Yeah.
And it really does feel like we've been guided in this direction,
Yes.
literally by no power of our own.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So, casting your mind back, I guess my first question to you is this what you imagined you'd be doing as a kid? Entrepreneurship, Islamic banking, what did you want to do?
No,
as a
of course. No kids are like imagine to be a banker. I don't know. I mean, probably you.
No, not me. Definitely not me.
Definitely not me.
I wanted to be a zoologist.
Yeah, I want to be an astronomer or a soldier or something like that, right?
Okay.
But I think towards like middle school, high school, I'm quite keen on entrepreneurship actually.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm.
So you grew up in Johor,
No, yeah,
States in Malaysia.
Yeah, I
And
grew
then
up in
you
Johor.
went to school in KL, Kuala Lumpur.
No, I went to school in Johor, like
Okay.
high school. I went to did my level in KL, sort of KL, not really KL, but
The outskirts.
yeah,
Yeah.
the outskirts. But then in Malaysia, I think after Form 3, you go into Form 4, which is like which is equivalent to O level basically, right? And you have to choose your stream, right? You have to choose whether arts. Usually in Malaysia, you can't mix and match. You have to choose art stream or like science stream.
Really? Okay.
So, yeah, so art streams are like economics, counting, things like that. Science streams are your biology, physics, and so on, right?
Okay, so even your art schemes aren't really arts.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
arts per se.
It's just kind of soft science versus hard science,
yes,
really.
technically,
Okay.
right? So I was keen on art stream, technically.
Why?
Because I wanted to become sort of like a businessman. I don't know what idea of business or something, but I wanted to become a businessman.
What was it that drove you towards that? Were you selling stuff at school? Were you?
Yeah, I did sell some stuff at school and so on, but I think it's innate, right? It's just in you. I think you want to build something or something like that, right? So, but then my dad is a lecturer. I mean, it's a physics or nuclear physics professor, right? So he's against that idea.
He wanted you to go into academia.
No, he wanted me to take the science stream. In hindsight, it's a better. It's also a better choice because the fact of the matter is a lot of, I would say, more academically inclined people take the science stream, right? And even at university, if you take science stream, you can go into like economics, countings, and so on.
I did
right?
physics.
Yeah,
I studied physics. Ended up in financial services.
So I did that. Scored pretty well. Got a scholarship. I remember in one of the interview, right? A scholarship interview. The interviewer asked me, "Why don't you apply?" At that time, I think I applied for actuarial science or something like that, just purely because of
At
the money.
university.
For the scholarship. For the scholarship. So you have to apply for what subject you want to do.
So for people who don't know, the scholarship program in Malaysia is relatively unique in that the state or different companies will pay for your bachelor's education abroad.
Yes.
Often in the UK, but also in America.
In America and
But
Australia.
the thing is, say like Bank Negara, the central bank where you ended up where you ended up working, they'll pay for your undergrad.
Yeah.
In exchange, you go and work there.
For a certain
period of time until it's paid off.
Yeah.
So that's quite common. Kind of like the best of the best students in Malaysia will vie for these scholarship programs. And there's like tiers of the different scholarship programs you can go for.
Yeah. So coming back to that story, right? The interviewer asked me, why don't you apply for medics? Because I think they saw my results, and usually I'm an Asian, right? Best student go to medics. I remember saying that I don't want to be doctors. I want to be the one who owns the hospital. Something like that.
Okay, that's quite a big thing to say for an 18-year-old.
Yeah, because, basically that, right? So I have that idea early on. So the interest is there early on. But being a banker, being in banking, that's not in the plan, right? No, not in the plan. Yeah.
It was just a path, a route. Yeah. So then you found yourself in the UK. You were doing economics at Exeter.
Yeah, I was doing economics at Exeter. Pretty well. Got first class. I had some good time. Went back and worked in
Bank Negara, the central bank, where you specialize in Islamic banking.
Yes, I was thrown into the Islamic banking department. So I have to basically technically take a degree in 3 months, learn everything about Islamic banking, right? All the concepts and so on.
And Malaysia is really seen as like this, for a long time, the hub for Islamic finance, for Islamic banking. How did they develop that reputation?
I think it's the will and the desire to develop that, right? It come from the top, also from like central bank. They want to develop that. The government also wants to develop that sector. So when you have that, basically coordinating will, right, and policies, everything can happen. Right? And a lot of things can happen.
And all of the Islamic economies, Malaysia was kind of uniquely positioned. I think it was like the 80s, maybe, where they decided to go all in on Islamic finance, wasn't it?
Yes, it started off as a real concern because Malaysia is Muslim majority, right? It's not like 100% Muslim, but it's Muslim majority, and And it's a real concern. Like my dad, like this is personal, right? My dad didn't buy a house until they have an alternative. Like I think Bank Islam.
Really? So he had loads of kids by that point.
Yeah. So, but he, my like I said,
For people who don't know, you're one of nine?
About nine. Yeah, 9 siblings.
So you're number 7 out of 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad was like say like the professor at UTM, right? One university. So we stayed in the university campus, like.
Oh really?
Yes. So I grew up in university, like technically in a campus.
So Cambridge wasn't that different for you when you were living on campus?
Yeah. Technically, yeah.
Obviously very different given you're in a whole different country.
So yeah, my dad didn't buy a first house until the alternative came about, right? The Bank Islam thing. So he kept renting until that.
Really interesting.
At that point. So it's a real
but he wasn't unique in that.
Hey, he wasn't he wasn't unique in the terms that a lot of people also have the similar
desire.
Yeah, objection
for sure.
to riba.
For sure. So
come about as that. It's inclusion.
Yeah.
Firstly, it's inclusion, right? You have to give the majority of the people
what they want
and a way to participate in the economy, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
so
asset buildings and so on.
You were in quite a unique position in this economy, which is the hub of Islamic finance, and we'll come back to that and revisit that later on. Then you decided to go to Cambridge to do an MBA. So you'd been working for maybe 5-6 years?
Yeah.
5-6 years, okay. And why the MBA? What was it about it?
So it's not something that is out of the blue, right? So the thing about central banking is it's a unique industry, meaning that you don't have another central bank in the country, right? So you are and the skills are different. So central banking skills are different. It's more policies and so on. I mean, corporate banks doesn't do policies per se, like national policies and so on. But I know that I don't want to do that for
forever.
Forever. So if I now offer myself to the industry, right? So what skill do I have? I mean, of course, I know like central bank offer a lot and so on, but it's not like 100% transferable or something like that.
So was it really skill based? That's why you were doing the MBA. It wasn't branding.
It's branding is one thing. Branding is about the schools, right?
Yes.
But the MBA is technically a gateway for me to go to switch industries, right? I mean, basically the MBA is always being sold as a way for you to switch industries, right?
Yeah, which I really, if anyone out there is considering doing an MBA, my sincere, even though it changed our lives, we met each other, we came up with the idea for Kestrl, 100%. But I don't think that's a usual route or story.
I think the Cambridge just have this like triple. If you change industry, change geography, and change, I think, position. That's your holy grail.
Everyone's trying to do one of those three things: move country, move industry, or get hired higher up wherever you are.
So that's the initial intention.
But for me, it's really about brand and network.
Yeah,
that's all it is. Brand, which is all about the university you go to. Just doing an MBA on its own for the academics, you can get most of that for free or £8.99 at Waterstones. You can buy what Harvard Business School taught me.
Or start a business.
Yeah, how to start a business. But branding, and it opens so many doors for you. We saw that at Kestrl. And network.
Yes.
The network, because you're making an educated guess that a lot of the people you'll study with will become high-flying individuals in the future.
Yes.
And a lot of those people actually supported us on our journey.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I'm spoiling the story. I'm trying to make it sequential, but we keep jumping around with it. So you're at Cambridge. Do you remember how we first met?
Prayer room, right?
Probably prayer room, because there were only a few Muslims on our course.
Yes.
So and people... Judge Business School used to be a hospital, for people who don't know, a children's hospital. So it's set up as kind of higgledy-piggledy all over the place. When you come into the main hall, it looks kind of like the staircases from Harry Potter and Hogwarts, the stairs going
That's
all
the
over
idea.
the place. So people either love or hate the architecture. So finding that prayer room was quite difficult.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of like knew from that, and then we had a few classes together in that first term.
Of course, yes.
I think corporate finance, accounting.
Can't remember which class, but
all of those in the first term we were doing. But do you remember when the idea came up for what we should do?
What we should do? No, what we are currently doing, or what we should do?
No, for Kestrl as a whole.
For Kestrl.
For starting something, doing something in business together.
I can't remember when exactly, but I think we toyed the idea of doing some business, right? Starting something. But I don't think it's Islamic banking.
No, my ambition was never entrepreneurship.
Okay, all right.
I think you know that.
Uh-huh.
I had been in consulting.
Yeah.
I was at Deloitte. I was at Alpha. I did an MBA because I was kind of sick of working in the culture was not very conducive to being Muslim, very alcohol based, a lot of socializing, late nights. That Ramadan preceding them was like the worst Ramadan I'd ever experienced because of work. I was working in beautiful buildings in the middle of London, top floor, surrounding, could see all of the city, but it was Ramadan. And I wanted to be at Tarawih. I was breaking fast on my own, alone, having to work late nights on these projects. And it was maddening. And it made me want to leave it all behind. But I just thought maybe I'll do an MBA and figure something else out, new industry, or at least get hired somewhere else more senior with a better culture. And I think we tell this story a lot, but I think it is actually true.
It's true.
I was paying for lunch.
Yeah. I think that's sparked the interest, right?
Yeah, we were in the canteen. I was paying for lunch, and you saw my card.
Yeah.
I remember this was the first time I was paying for lunch with my card, and it was Barclays. And you said, "Hey man, why don't you use an Islamic bank?"
Yeah, I mean that's true because that's a backstory to that, right? I did my degree in 2010 until 2013.
Yeah, we were the same year. Undergrad.
So at that time, when I arrived, I opened a Lloyd's account. But it's in an Islamic account. At that time, I think
it existed.
It existed, and it's Amana and so on and so on, right? Lloyd's also have that. So in my mind, they are still there because I still have my account. If you are
Lloyd's made the choice, unlike HSBC.
Yeah.
If you had an Islamic account, they were going to
keep it
for you.
Yeah. So
they'd maintain it. Whereas HSBC Amana, when they left, they closed down people.
Yeah. So it was a genuine question for me. Like why
are you using?
Yeah, because I saw you praying, man.
Yeah, and I think that's why we were quite close because we would use the prayer room.
Yeah,
we'd find halal spots in Cambridge, usually all in Mill Road. Yeah. And then my response was, well, we have Islamic banks, but they're not great.
Yeah,
and I was thinking of Al Rayyan and some of the others.
My mind was thinking about Lloyd's.
You were thinking about Lloyd's.
Yes.
And that's when I was like, oh, Lloyd's had an Islamic bank account. I didn't really know.
Yeah.
Because it kind of came and went really quickly. And I wasn't old enough to be thinking about opening bank accounts and stuff at that time when it first started. And that's when we thought maybe there's something there.
Yeah. I think that's sparked the conversations.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not the point that we say, okay, let's build a business around this.
Other stuff happened.
Yeah.
There was a Financial Times article about Wahid.
Yep.
That came out in
we
early
were in the
2019.
library, I think.
Yeah, we were sat in the library doing one of many assignments.
Yeah.
And then we saw this article on our free Cambridge Financial Times subscription, which we don't have anymore, with Junaid, the CEO and founder of Wahid, his picture there in the office saying Islamic finance coming to the UK, new Islamic robo-advisor. And we thought, hey, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think partly we were thinking, should we get a job at Wahid?
Really?
I think so, because we wrote to them. I don't know if they replied back, but we said, we're two Cambridge MBA students. Are you interested?
Okay.
They did. Actually, Abul, who came on our podcast, came and said, we should have a meeting. We should have a meeting. And that's how I went to see him.
Oh, okay. I think I didn't.
You were doing something else, I think, but we went to see him. And I think that's when we were like, maybe we could. Yeah. We could do something. And then we started to put two and two together. I think for me, it was, I'd done a bunch of robo-advice projects at my previous consulting job. And then you had the Islamic finance and banking know-how. So I thought, maybe it's possible. Maybe we could do it.
For context, I think that was the year that Monzo blew up, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was a different time for fintech.
Yes.
Monzo, Revolut, Starling. Chime, Nubank, N26.
Yeah.
All these guys were entering, and it was all about blitz scaling.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how you make money. Doesn't think about that later. Just get the customers in. And here's a £10 million check from a venture capital firm to go and do it and experiment.
Yeah.
And we naively thought we could get a piece of that action.
I think you need a bit of naivety in doing a startup, right?
You think so?
Yeah, because if you are real, because let's put it like this, right? Like 90% of startup fail
In their first year.
Yeah. Who wanna takes that odds, right? It's not wise to take that gamble or do that gamble, basically, right? So if you think on the framework of risk, reward, any calculation whatsoever.
You'd be a crazy person to be doing this.
So you have to be a bit naive and crazy to think that we can do it.
We were both.
Yeah.
We were definitely both. We were naive in thinking we'd be able to raise funds very quickly. And I should say we were thinking about doing other stuff. We tried consulting.
Yeah.
Because that was my bread and butter. And I was really saying, I think we could do a consultancy and we'll go off the Cambridge brand, some Islamic finance. We almost got one client.
Yes.
If you remember? And what happened?
You put the price in and they never responded.
Yeah. I think they, the whole time, thought we were going to do it for free. And for context, we can't say who they were, but they were a pretty big, well-known bank in the UK who were very interested. We did like multiple proposals, pitched to them directly at quite a senior level. And then when I put in the pricing, we just never heard back from them.
Yeah.
So we learned a lesson which came back. It reared its head again at Kestrl years later. But then we thought, okay, let's try and do Monzo for Muslims.
Yeah. Yeah.
An Islamic digital bank. But we weren't alone. There were a lot of other people trying this at the same time. This was 2019. Why did you think we could do something different to them at the time?
Something different to them. To be honest, I don't think at that time it's something different to them. I think you mean the other Islamic,
other Islamic, because there were loads of them at the time who didn't survive.
So you have to remember when we start, there's none in the market like operating.
They were conceptual.
Yes.
There were ideas.
For me at that time, it's not about being different. It's about
being first.
Yeah, being. Executing it well, right? So I didn't think about differentiation at that time.
Thank you for listening to Muslim Money Talk. If you like what you've heard so far, you might be interested in checking out what we do at Kestrl, the Muslim Money app. Kestrl is a service that helps Muslims who want to grow their wealth without having to compromise, whether it's on their belief or user experience or price. I founded Kestrl because of how fed up I was at how poor Islamic financial services were in this country. Often people didn't use them because of how bad the user experience or customer service, and indeed how high on price they were. So Kestrl was the answer to that. If you download the Kestrl app today, it can help you by creating a budgeting plan. Plug in whatever bank account you have and it will create an auto budget just for you. You can then tell us what goals you're saving for and we'll save towards them automatically into pots, and then crucially link you towards Sharia compliant investment and savings products as well. So download Kestrl today and try it out for yourself. Now back to the podcast. Okay. But still, looking back on it, two guys fresh out of an MBA thinking, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And about 5 million Muslims in the UK, 50% of them over 18. We'll get 2.5 million customers in year one.
Yeah.
Crazy talk. But fast forwarding a bit, we had some ups and downs. We tried to raise capital. I remember emailing close to 100 investors and VCs, and we got responses from 3 of them. 2 of them are
pretty
flat.
Good response, 3%.
Yeah, true. Yeah. 2 of them are flat no. 1 of them asked to meet, and that was
Cambridge Angels.
Not Cambridge Angels, but Cambridge Venture. Cambridge, the university itself has a VC team for any new enterprises which are being created by students. Yeah. And Haris Irfan, who's friend of the show, runs Cordoba Capital, ex-Deutsche Bank, ex-Barclays, where he headed up their Islamic finance teams. He called us back on the day, if you remember, to talk through the idea, and he gave us some really sage advice at the time, which we definitely took on board. Cambridge, it was seen as a bit too out there, not just because it was fintech and Cambridge loves science, but the Islamic thing. Do you remember their feedback?
Yeah. But the one thing that I took from that meeting that actually saved us is they advised us to take on a founding CTO. At that time, you have to remember
We had no developer experience,
and their advice is never outsource this. And I think a lot of our competitors did that. And from that meeting, even though we get a flat rejection, right? Not a flat rejection.
Not flat rejection. We've kept in touch with them ever since. Yeah.
But that advice, I think, is very invaluable.
For sure.
Yeah.
We didn't appreciate that. And then I think we went through the YC Startup School, which is still all online for free. And they drummed that into us that you have to have that tech co-founder.
Yeah.
Which, of course, we then found in the form of Irfan Radzi.
Yes.
Our amazing and kind of crazy CTO. Okay, cool. So we met, we came up with the idea for Kestrl. Early business plan was just a digital bank. We actually got some shareholders as well. So alhamdulillah, people like Sultan Chaudhry, ex-CEO of Orion Bank, Stella Cox, who runs DDCap, a few other like well-known people in the industry managed to invest, and it was enough for us to say, let's do this.
Yes, full time.
Was that the tipping off point for you? Because we'd graduated, I had gotten a job at PwC where I was working. But you, instead of going back home to Malaysia to work on it remote, you stayed here in the UK.
Yeah, so but we promised ourselves 6 months. I remember that. So
we're going to try this for 6 months post-graduation.
Yes. If you don't raise any money post 6 months, we just gonna call it quit and go back to our job, right? In my mind at that time,
you could go back to Bangalore.
Could go back, and then I could of course find another job or whatever, right? And
you'd done your internship at Shell during the MBA and
so I think the worst case scenario is I lose 6 months at that time. That's my calculation to it, right? I still just recently graduated from Cambridge MBA. I think that's gonna put me in with the industry. Yeah. So for me, that's the risk. 6 months, and so okay, let's take that risk. And we managed to close before
the 6 months. Alhamdulillah, we did. And I remember I got a massive amount of respect for you during those 6 months, because whilst I was living a relatively cushy life, I was single, I had no debt, I had like quite a comfortable job, and I was building Kestrl at the same time. You were married, you had 2 children.
Yeah, at that time. Got 4 now.
You got 4 now, mashallah. And you were doing odd jobs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way to survive, right? Yeah. And you have to send money back for the family to survive.
Tell me about that time. What was it like psychologically for you?
I think because here's the secret, right? When you don't have time, you don't have time to think, right?
True.
So
that's very true.
So I don't have time to be depressed or anything. I'm just like in constant grind.
Yeah.
So you don't have time to entertain your mental state or whatever it is.
You were doing food delivery.
Yeah, I was in the morning. I was doing like some cleaning at I think it's John Lewis in Cambridge. And then I go to the office. I think at that time we were accepted.
Yeah, we had got into the Cambridge Accelerator.
Yes.
So that was our first office.
Yes, and that is the second time we applied, right? I think the first time we got rejected or something.
First time, I think we didn't have much of an idea.
I see.
We got rejected. Yeah. But second time, we had a much firmer idea and business plan, which was still the digital bank.
Yeah. So we got an office there.
Yeah.
So I went there, do the work for Kestrl about until 4 or 5, basically office hour, right? And then after that, I go straight to food deliveries.
Food delivery. And you sent your family back to Malaysia?
Yeah, I sent my family back to Malaysia.
So you could go all in founder mode.
Yes, and also the exchange rate helped, right? In terms of odd jobs here and sending investment money.
And our friend, was it Alpha?
Yeah, Alpha
gave you his car.
So that's a story for another day, right? So basically, got a friend, Alpha. Shout out to Alpha, right?
Shout out to Alpha, who's on the MBA with us, Indonesian. He's now here in London.
Yeah. He's during the summer he got an internship or something like that. In Amazon warehouse somewhere off grid in Manchester.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something like that. That's why he needs a car. So he talked to me. He thought about renting. So he has to rent for about 3 months or 2 months or something like that. And the bill come out to 3,000 or something like that, right? I told him, why do you rent? You just buy a cheap car
cheap old car.
Yeah, for 1,000 quid or something like that. Then just get rid of it after that.
What was the car?
It's Mini.
It was a Mini?
Yeah, it's a Mini. So he goes, yeah, I'll do that. So then when he want to go back, I'm still here. He just give it to me.
Gave it to you, yeah.
I use that for...
But that was a lifeline for you.
Yeah, but technically I had a car.
You still had your family car.
But then sold it off when
true.
My family went back.
So that 6 months was very different for the two of us. But then alhamdulillah, we raised the funds.
Yeah.
We went all in. Then, bam, March 2020.
Yeah.
COVID lockdown. And that changed things.
Yes.
So we made the decision you would go back to Malaysia.
Yep.
To be with your family.
Yeah, I remember it's one day before the lockdown here or something. I already hear the chatter about the lockdown.
I remember you sending me a picture from Heathrow.
Yeah.
And saying, this is it, man.
I'm going.
And we didn't see each other for 2.5 years.
Yes.
2.5 years, yeah. But we spoke, it was weird because we would speak every day.
Yeah.
But you don't see these people. And then other players began to enter. Irfan came on as CTO. You found him.
Yeah, Irfan actually came on
a little bit before.
As in like a part-time CTO or something like that, right?
But I think this, right, when it comes to a co-founder, it's kind of like a marriage in a way.
It is.
Right? But it's kind of more serious than that financially, because you got to be able to ride through the good times and ride through the bad times and deal with disputes and know each other's strengths and know each other's weaknesses, all for the shared vision, this shared idea. So it was me, you, my dad had come on board, and we talked about his story when he was on a couple of weeks ago and why he did come on. And a lot of our shareholders came on because he was there as well. But we needed that tech guy, and Irfan was that person.
Yeah.
And he came through your network.
Yeah, so the funny story is Irfan is of the same school as me, like high school. He's a bit older than me, or a bit is an understatement. But
mashallah, he looks much younger than both of us.
Yeah,
I'd say, but yeah, mashallah, he's in his 40s now.
So technically I only knew him as someone in the tech industry.
Yeah,
among my friends, right? Because I don't think it was that popular 20 years ago. He started going into the industry 20 years ago. You have to remember, I think 20 years ago, people see IT as a service, like a support service, right? So it's not as popular to become a developer like today.
Maybe not in the East.
Yeah.
But the dot-com bubble changed things.
In the
Western world. In the 90s, the early 2000s, suddenly people were like, we could build whole industries around this.
Yeah. So not in Malaysia. Yeah. So I only knew him. I knew him from school, right? But also I remember going to his burger venture because I'm interested in business. I just meet him.
What was your impression of him?
He's during that time or now?
During that time.
I think he's capable, he's good. At that time, he's already a CTO of an established company.
A big company in Malaysia.
Yeah, so it's fine. But then he's a bit crazy. So I don't need to convince him.
That was the thing that shocked me the most. How little convincing Irfan needed.
Yeah.
And subhanAllah, there's very few people like that out there, where it's not about the money.
And it's like,
it's about the mission.
Yeah.
And what drove him the most. And I think that's the big thing about co-founders.
Yeah.
If they're not aligned with your mission, whatever that North Star is, and for us, it's helping Muslims grow wealth without compromise.
Actually, just a side note, right? If you are co-founding a team and money is your mission, it's fine. It's just to be upfront.
As long as you have the same.
Yeah.
As long as everyone has the same goal. But if you have two people with very different goals, one person who's short-term money minded, and another person who's got a big picture, world-changing idea, it's going to end in disaster 9 times out of 10. And we went through the Techstars Accelerator scheme. How many of those companies had co-founders who broke up?
Yeah.
I think 60-70% of them.
Yep.
Yeah. So we saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
So we bring in Irfan, and then you guys took that advice from Cambridge and you built our tech team in Malaysia.
Yeah. That's where we spend our money, technically.
Yeah.
Right. We did no marketing, no anything, right? So basically it's all tech spend.
We made the decision. What would make us different from other people? Everything is in-house.
Yes.
Which in the Islamic space, people were kind of outsourcing everything at that time, which was cheaper for sure.
Yeah.
But we wanted quality and we wanted to ensure that.
Wanted to ensure that we have something, right? So yeah, I think that saved us in the later
It did. It 100% saved us in a big way. But tell me, because we got some really, really driven, really smart young guys who joined us in that house that your father-in-law gave us in Malaysia that we just lived in, kind of Facebook style, right? In those early days, you guys were literally building in a garage. And you brought in Akeef, Aga was number one. Akeef came on as an intern. Was Arifin there as well?
Arifin there.
Who else was there in those early days?
Naila is there, but
Naila joined in data,
but not in the garage.
But in the garage it was like 6 or 7 guys.
Yes.
Tell me about that, because I missed this. I was locked away in the UK during COVID. What was the culture? What was the vibe?
So these guys are known to Irfan. So Irfan is a bit like he's a figure in the Malaysian tech scene. So he can call up people and so on, right? So they are all recruited from Irfan. So and then we came in together, right? Sit together because it's COVID. So luckily at that time these people are single except for me and Irfan, right? So they can we give them a place to stay and work, right? And what's the vibe like? I would say it's basically all boys college or something like that, right? It's very frat.
It was a frat house.
Yeah, it's a frat house.
Yeah. Which worked at the time.
Because we were working until late night and so on, right? Yeah. The thing is about startup, right? And this is the conundrum that I would say, right? And reflecting back, for you to survive, you have to squeeze more out of little resources, right? And these are the sacrifices that these boys have to make. Because if we basically budgeted like a corporate project, that budget not gonna go far, right? So basically we have to squeeze more, right? It's just the effort of that make the company survive.
What's your theory on hiring and finding good people?
So my take, right, is always about the individual motivation, like your innate motivation. What is it in you that you want to be there? And for me, it has to align, meaning that what we can offer and what they want align, right? For example, they want money. We can't offer money. I mean, we can offer money, but it's not like
it's not going to be commensurate with what you could get in a big corporate.
Yeah, it's just a fact of a
startup.
Of a startup, right? But if what they want is they want to build something, right? They want to learn a lot of things. They want to challenge themselves. Then it's aligned with our stage of growth at that time, right? It must align because there's only so much that we can do to motivate you.
We can't give you money, but we can give you an experience and an education super accelerated compared to a massive corporate, especially at that time, because things were changing like crazy. We were designing an app from scratch. At this point, we realized the digital bank wasn't going to work. Because we didn't have the funding for it. Plus, we'd seen a bunch of our competitors go down. Yeah,
we run the numbers and we know that there's a secret sauce that we are missing. But now we have it.
Yeah, we have the alhamdulillah, which we'll talk about right at the end, what the secret sauce is. But we had become like a personal finance app.
Yeah, basically.
Budgeting, auto saving. We had an investment marketplace that people could invest into, Sharia screening. And the guys were building all this from scratch.
Yes.
All in-house.
Yep.
All our own tech, our own IP.
So I think, hiring is, you're going to make some mistake in hiring. So, right, it's not going to be perfect, right? But I do think that especially in the early stage, we don't really hire for skills, because the way it's also the way Irfan built, right? So you have to remember Irfan is not a normal university graduate, learn from the class and so on. So he learns everything off the internet or learn himself, right?
Yeah.
So we always have this principle that if you are smart enough, I mean, you have a decent IQ, you can do problem solving. I can throw you anything. You have the basic, right? And so I can throw you anything and you can learn the skills. The skills will get there. You will get the skills. But something that we can't teach is your drive. So we always look for drive.
So would you rather find someone with all drive,
Yes,
but no skill?
Yes. In 6 months, he will get better over the
rather
other.
than all skill and no drive.
So here's the other thing about tech industry also, right? The skills change. Next year is different skills.
True.
So you can't hire, you can see people as just skills, right? You have to see them as a talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay, cool. So then obviously we'll fast forward, cut the story short a little bit. We started off consumer app. Alhamdulillah was doing really well. Big banks began to reach out. Bank Islam Malaysia reached out and said, can we white label the tech?
Yep.
And that's where us having the in-house tech team
really
paid off.
Yep.
Because now we could be B2B, business to business software as a service with our own tech team, our own IP. We provide it to you. And we started doing that for banks. And that saved us during that period. I remember there was a point, 2022, we were on our knees.
I think we were not drawing salary for...
We had not drawn salary for 6 months.
Yeah, something like that.
And we had 3 months of runway left, even without our salaries. And we were like, we need something. Something has to happen.
But the conversation already happened. Like, it's not like the 3 months it's done. I think the conversation is almost about a year or something like that.
We've been talking with this bank, Bank Islam, only 6 months at that point. Only 6 months that they had approached us, but we didn't know if it was going to happen or not.
Yeah, true.
And then things started to move. Things started to move, and they said, we need this. And I remember getting a call in my car from, it was Zareen, who's our good friend over at Bank Islam, and he said, listen, Areeb, sorry, it didn't come up in the board, so we can't get a signature, we've got to wait another month. And I said, Zareen, please, can we get an advance? Because we need it. And he was good enough to make that happen. Alhamdulillah. Do you remember we got that first advance? And that saved us. That saved the company. And since then, alhamdulillah, we've gone from strength to strength on B2B, and now to a point where we can look back at that original idea. The original idea where Muslims in this country in the Western world are still so underserved when it comes to just having a good service level of Islamic bank. Here. There's nothing fully digital. There's no Monzo equivalent or Revolut equivalent for the Islamic world. And now, alhamdulillah, we have... Can we talk about this now? Shall we talk about it?
You are the CEO, man.
We can definitely announce, and we're going to make the full announcement at Muslim Tech.
It's not
It's not live. If you got into this point of the episode, you deserve to know this. But we will be launching a full digital Islamic banking offering this summer.
Inshallah.
Card scheme, current account, Sharia compliant return this summer. So a lot more to say on that. So do watch this space. And if you do want to be one of the first 1,000 customers, please reach out to us, because we're being very selective with who that first batch of customers are. Kestrl. Let's close the chapter on that.
Okay. Right. What you want to talk about?
You've lived in the UK, you've lived in Malaysia.
Yes.
We're seeing a big trend right now of people saying the UK's light is dimming.
Okay.
Branding wise. Before everyone wanted to come to the UK. Now not even just Muslim, but people in general, they want to move from the UK. People talk about the US. Muslims talk about Dubai. They talk about Saudi. What's your take on that?
What, on people moving?
Where should they go? What's a good place for a Muslim professional entrepreneur? Where they should they end up?
I think it's depend on the opportunities, right? Not everyone have the choice to pick up a place,
of course. But if you had the dream. What I'm trying to tee you up here for Daeng is to say, Malaysia is the place to go.
No, it depends on what kind of lifestyle you want.
What's the lifestyle like in Malaysia?
What kind of culture you want and so on. What is the lifestyle in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Malaysia is, for me, it's balance. You have modernity, like modern stuff and so on, right? But in that modern state, you are the family values are still intact. The culture creep in the modernity. So even if like you have like super twin towers or whatever, right? Huge twin towers, you can hear azan. It's not like, so we are trying to find ways how do we practice Islam in modernity, right?
I understand what you're saying. I think you're saying that a lot of the criticism that's levied against Dubai is that there's a lot of not very halal activity.
Do you find that in Malaysia too?
You can, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Because
you can find pubs in Malaysia. Because the thing is, it's not. There's a lot of non-Muslims who live in Malaysia.
Yes, about 40%.
40%. Big Chinese population, big Indian population as well. So, but it's not
the question is, right,
explicit, I think.
It's not explicit, and this is the thing, right? Nation state is new, right? Nation state only exists about 100 years ago. They used not to be nation state, right? So nation state like Malaysia, these things are new.
Malaysia was just part of Indonesia, part of Singapore, or one thing before.
It used to be kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
It's not defined by ethnicity or something. The British like to split up nation based on ethnicity or religion, whatever. But somehow Malaysia is not. It's multicultural from the inceptions. Inception of Malaysia, not inceptions of the land or whatever it is. Right? So, how do you deal with that? Right? How do you, as a country, deal with that? How do you accommodate different needs, different wants, different religion in a country?
I can tell you how.
Yeah, how?
You give people like 65 or 70 public holidays. This happens in Malaysia. It's our biggest thing is, okay, are we going to have the meeting today in Kestrl, or is it going to be another Malaysian public holiday?
Because come to Malaysia, a lot of public holidays.
They celebrate the Islamic ones, the Chinese ones, the Indian ones, the Buddhist ones, the Christmas, Easter.
Even from like Islamic perspective, right? I mean, it's another problem. You have like 99% Muslim population. So it's easy to say, okay, Sharia law.
Yeah.
Right. But when you have 60, how do you manage that? How does Sharia law like interact with the common law, for example? Malaysia have a dual law system, basically. The common law and the Sharia law, right?
But under Sharia caliphates of
Sharia
old...
Caliphate. Yeah.
Under caliphates of old, there were many non-Muslims who lived within that system.
Yeah.
And there were dual rules for different people. Like, Muslims had to pay zakat tax, but then non-Muslims had a different tax that they paid, the jizya.
Yeah, but you don't do that in a nation state, right? Because everyone is a citizen to that country. So the concept of nation state, you are not bounded by your religion. You are not Muslim per se. You are Malaysian.
I want to ask you about that. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about it.
Ask.
But one thing in Malaysia that's always struck me, it doesn't anymore, but in the early days it struck me as a little bit different, are the different rights that the original ethnic population of Malaysia, the Malays, have compared to the non-ethnic Malaysians, the Indians, Chinese, expats, what have you.
Yeah.
And you guys, you refer to yourselves as Bumi Putera, people of the earth.
Yes.
And you guys have slightly different rights, and that kind of protects you guys. To the outside, sometimes it can look a little funny, or maybe a little bit like, okay, it's segregated, or there's special rights for that community. But you explained it to me very well. So I'd like for you to do that to the viewers.
So I'm not defending or anything, I'm just putting in the context, right? So during the formation of Malay state, basically after the independence of British, came out the question of citizenship, right? who is the citizen of Malaysia, right? The Chinese and Indian were brought by the British to work in Malaysia. They were never
They weren't already there.
Yeah.
They were brought over by colonial times.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do we accept them as citizen or what, right? So I think that at that time and economically, you have to remember the majority, which is the Malays, as a group is a lot poorer than the Chinese.
Why is that?
Because the Chinese work on usually I think they work on the businesses a lot more, like in the cities, like they are Chinese. That's the thing about the Malay that British cannot get their head around is they can't get the Malay to work. Right?
What do you mean?
Meaning that they are not like, I want more, something like that.
They weren't motivated by money.
Yeah. So
career progression.
So you have to see they already have land, right? They are land owners, right?
Yeah.
They fish. They farm. So they got all they want, right? Why do I need more, right?
Wow.
So to develop the economy, what we call economy now, right? The British bring in the Chinese to work on this mines and so on. So they become like business owners.
They began to aggregate more and more wealth.
Yeah.
More started flowing to them.
So if you look at the distribution of wealth at that time, so the Malay as the majority group is basically poor. So when you have that situation, for stability, that just not gonna work. Right? So, and that's also come up with the citizen questions and so on. So the Malays were like, why are we giving them citizenship and so on? So the rights were the compromise.
And the rights include what?
The rights are actually they in the constitution they have, I think, better right to scholarship. I think land. It's not like the Chinese cannot own land. There's like different.
There's barriers.
Yeah, there's some
There's
barriers.
more hurdles to jump.
Something like that. That's the original one. But of course, as things progress and so on, the interpretation becomes something else and so on, right?
Can people marry into it? Like if someone marries a Malay, do they get the same?
I think the kids can get them.
The kids do?
Yeah.
Okay.
And depends. I can't remember.
You're not a lawyer.
Yeah.
There's a religious element to it as well.
Yes. So they define. Yeah, they define the Malay in the constitution as, I think, Muslim practice Malay culture. So something like that.
Okay.
So technically, and also in Malaysia, there's also a question, right? In Malaysia, a Malay cannot convert into Christians or whatever.
Can't leave Islam.
Yeah.
That's not in Malaysia. That's anywhere in Islam.
But as a nation state, right?
Oh, it's enforced.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't go to the legally, like, because we have our religion in our identification card, right? You can't change that.
Really?
Yeah.
On your ID card, it says Muslim.
Yeah, it says Islam.
Islam.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So
I understand it. I understand, and I think we saw a lot of race-based riots in the UK.
Yeah.
Whether people want to call them race-based or not, I think that's ultimately what it was about.
But
and I do, to be honest, I kind of empathize with the local, like, English population, in that a lot of them feel like they've lost their wealth, they've lost their jobs, they've and they see an immigrant population. Even though I was born here, my father's been here, even people who've been here for 2-3 generations, they see people coming in, amassing wealth for whatever reason, right? I really think it's been pushed from the top that immigration is the problem, as opposed to tax and other things which are causing wealth to be held by certain classes at the top. But Malaysia, to prevent that, got ahead of it, and they built in certain protective rights for their local population.
But now come the question: these Chinese and Indians, they are like 3-4 generation already. They are Malaysian. Like,
they're still there.
They're still there. They are now Malaysian, like pure Malaysian. In the early days, they are Chinese. They can go back to China, for example, the motherland or something like that, right? But now they are like, they can't go back. So now, so it's now the conversation is: do we still have it, or is it time for us as a nation to move on?
Culturally, they're pretty much embedded.
Yeah.
The main difference is Islam.
Yes.
That's the big thing.
I mean, it comes with different culture also, right?
Yeah.
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 So here's the thing, right? If you compare Malaysia and Indonesia, right? Indonesia also have quite large population of Chinese or other thing like other races and so on, right? But Indonesia take the approach of assimilation, so it's forced upon them. So that's why a lot of them cannot speak Chinese. They speak in Indonesian,
It's
right?
forced, yeah.
And even the name they have to sort of change.
And English isn't the language of business.
Yeah, it's English is the language of business. But in Malaysia, you are allowed to have Chinese school, Indian schools, and so on. So the culture is preserved.
So let me ask you this: for people watching and thinking, I want to do hijrah and I want to move from the UK to Malaysia, is it easy?
Easy in terms of what you can fly in.
Lifestyle-wise.
I think for British it's easier because we are a former colony of British. Colony, whatever you want to call it, right? So a lot of systems are British-based.
Yeah.
We drive on the same side, right?
English is the language of business.
Yeah,
you have British schools.
Yeah, British schools.
What's the life like?
The life is, I think it's good. Of course, for me it's good, right?
Yeah.
You got everything you want, right? You got your holidays inside the countries.
Yeah.
You got your work, your opportunities.
I think it's a great place for a family.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic place for a young family. And I've been to Malaysia so many times. Of course, most of our team are based there. The only thing that prevents me is how far away it is from the UK.
We can't change that, right?
No. It's far. It's far. And I like the GCC because it's relatively central to my world.
Different lifestyle.
Very different lifestyle.
Very different lifestyle.
I think if you're young, you're single, you're a young couple, UAE has its appeals.
Yeah.
If you have the privilege of going there. If you have a young family, Malaysia has a very different appeal.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I want to ask you this because you're an economist by training.
Yeah, I'm a training. Right. Yeah, left that.
We were having this debate in a coffee shop the other day.
We always have debate with you. 5 years of debate.
5 years of debating. What does the ideal Islamic economy truly look like? Because we've got places like Malaysia, Pakistan, Turkey now trying to make more and more moves.
Yeah.
Some of them moving away from fiat and looking at going into crypto.
Yeah.
Some of them saying maybe we should look at a gold-backed system again instead of how many people decoupled the fiat currency from gold.
So
what is a truly Islamic economy, and can we take examples from history, from the caliphates of old? And I draw an example from he's often called the fifth true Khalifa of Islam, but Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, right? Where during his time he was seen as one of the great reformers of Islam, and the reason he's called one of the fifth Khalifas, even though he wasn't fifth, he was eighth in the Umayyad dynasty. Around 717 to 720, he only had 3 short years in rule, but he introduced so much change in his time, so much governmental change, that it got to a point where it almost seemed like poverty had been eradicated under the Islamic Empire at the time, and it stretched from Persia to Andalusia to Egypt, but they could not find a single person who could accept zakat payment. And zakat, for people who don't know, I call it a welfare tax, right? 2.5% of a Muslim's net wealth is taken and given to Muslims in need. Yeah. But they had a surplus of zakat where they were collecting, and they couldn't actually find anyone to give that to, which is crazy. And it's a crazy stat for this time where you have Muslims who, in this country, 50% of Muslims live below the poverty line. They struggle to pay at least one of their bills. They're using food banks, and that was research done by Islamic Relief and Muslim Census. How have we fallen so far? And what should we be doing? Can we emulate and learn lessons from them?
Just a disclaimer, I'm not a scholar or anything like that, right?
But one day he's going to do a PhD. He's going to do a PhD in this.
Inshallah. So your original question, what is a true Islamic economics, right? So the term economic itself is new. I mean, relative new, right? It's not like during the Prophet there's a term economics. So if you look at like one of the earliest writing about Islamic economics, Abu Ala al-Maududi, basically, right? So if you look at his writing, it's all about principles. And you have to remember, our situation is different from the days of the prophets. I'll give you one example. The invention of private limited company actually changed the game in economy, right? Because you are no longer an individual. It's a legal entity, private limited company.
You're no longer responsible as an individual if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
It's your company's responsibility.
Yes. And it's basically creating another human, right? So you can't do that during the time of the prophet, basically, right?
If you were a business, you were an individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no demarcation of that. So how is it? And your question comes back to currency, right? Gold, fiat, and so on. I understand it's a huge factor in how the economy works, but in like anything in Islam, right? It comes back to individuals, right? Tarbiyah is very important. Because we are individual actors. You can have like superb system or whatever it is, but the individual responsibility toward gods and towards humanity is still there, right? For example, like you talk about Khalifa and so on, Khalifa Umar Abdul Aziz. It's a good example of a very good Khalifa, right? But you can find multiple examples of very bad Khalifa within the same system.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All of the Umayyad leaders before then.
I don't want to say all or whatever,
Well,
right?
before then, most of them, they were not known to be the most pious of leaders. Let's put it at that.
Yeah.
Let's leave it like that.
Yeah.
To the point where when he came in, people were like, this is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. So is it the system or the person?
It seems like what you're getting at is that...
No. So we can have, what I'm saying is, we can create a device like the most perfect system, right?
But the leader who comes in at the top, completely destabilize that.
Yeah. And that's why in Islam, you have to know your God, right? As individuals. It's not the system know your God, right? You yourself, as individual, have to be responsible, right? So for me, I mean, my opinion, for an Islamic economics, for a truly, I wouldn't say truly, but for us to have a fair justice economic system, the population itself have to have tawheed and so on, right? Have to be responsible individuals, right? And I take another, I mean, in Abu al-Maududi books, right? One of the key principles is just fairness. Fairness it's not a system, right? It's just fairness.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a system. So what's fair?
It's quite subjective.
Yeah.
Is it subjective?
It is subjective.
For something to be fair and equitable, you can put objective limits on that.
Yeah, but it is subjective. I think it's subjective to be fair, right? And then you put in government controls and so on, right? But to say what in an Islamic economy, I don't know, man.
You're not giving me the answer I'm looking for. I thought you were going to say we need to go back to a gold-backed system. Maybe crypto can be the real answer to it.
Okay, if that's the question, right? So if we take the we dissect the question, right? Is gold the answers, right? My question to you: during the time of gold as a currency, is there poor people?
For sure. Of course.
So is that the answer?
It's not the answer, but
Yeah.
I think people like gold and Muslims like gold.
Yeah, because
The idea of the dinar and dirham
Yeah.
were based on gold and silver, and they themselves weren't. I don't think they were made out of gold. They were originally. Dinar and dirham, they were.
Yeah.
But a gold-backed system is anti-inflationary. you can't invent more gold. Yeah, you can mine more gold.
You can mine more gold.
It's harder to do that.
We keep finding more gold in this world.
Yeah, but there's a real physical and energy requirement in order to do that. You can't just print money. 30% of all US dollars in circulation were printed during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Which like the cost of living crisis never went away, right? Everything's going to be more expensive forever now because that happened, and that's insane.
Yeah.
No, whereas when something is gold backed and finite, it has like there's like a checks and balance process in there that it prevents successive governments from doing things like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it comes with its own problem, right? So if let's say, right, your thesis is because it's finite, or it's only grows certain numbers a year or something, we can put that in a system of fiat currency. You can put in
you can set a control that we're not going to go above this amount each year. True, you could do that.
So if you look at gold, right? Gold, what derive the value of gold? What derive the value of gold?
It's people's perception.
Yeah, it's people's perception.
It's purely people's perception. Yeah, true.
So it's not utility, right? Why not uranium or whatever, right?
People like it. People like gold. It has, a lot of traditional.
Yeah. Because it's stable and so on.
It's stable. It looks nice, jewelry, all that kind of thing. People have been in love with it since maybe the beginning of time.
But you have to remember, gold is basically a ribawi item. Basically, it's a currency, right? You can't buy. That's why you can't do FX. That's how you derive. You can't do like FX. You can't do deferred FX. You have to be spot, right? Because of gold. So gold is a currency. You can't buy gold in a deferred scheme. You have to buy in spot, on spot, right? But you can buy cattle or sheep in deferred, right?
So what you mean is I'll pay you now and receive the cow in a year's time.
Yeah, you can.
But you can't do that with gold because the price fluctuates so much.
Yeah, because it's a currency. It's not goods. So you have to remember the concept of currency.
It's not a currency.
So what is a currency?
A currency is something, what's the three definitions? It's easily transferable. It's a store of value. It's a measure of value, right? Gold is not easily transferable.
What is a currency during the Prophet time?
The little coins that were created, the dirhams and dinars, which were gold and silver. They were gold and silver.
So why do you think gold is ribawi item?
What do you mean by ribawi item?
So ribawi item meaning that you have to trade gold on spot, right? Why table is you can buy table on deferred? Why you can't buy gold on deferred scheme?
Because the price could change massively. So you can make a massive loss.
This price can change.
This price can change.
Yeah.
True. Because of scarcity, because of inflation, all of that.
Yeah. Any price can change.
Then everything is a ribawi item if that's the definition.
Yeah. So that's why it's specifically on gold. Because it's a currency. It has no utility. It's a representation.
It has no utility of its own. True.
Yeah. It's a representation of the economy.
So what you're saying is we have this love affair with gold, though. We shouldn't have.
I don't say that we shouldn't have. But is it the answer? I don't know, man. We always go back to our good time, for example, right? We think gold, it's ingrained in us.
Golden age of Islam.
Yeah, something like that, right? And want to replicate that.
Yeah.
But is it the answer for the modern world?
Yeah, I think it can be an answer right now. It's an answer to massive inflationary tactics. It's an answer to people who are keeping their money in current accounts because they can't generate interest because they're Muslim, and it's getting destroyed by inflation. Storing your money in finite assets like gold or Bitcoin.
Yeah, but that becomes your basically investment vehicle. Right?
Yeah, it becomes an asset but not a currency. But what about the idea of the gold-linked card, the gold-linked debit card, where suddenly you're pegging your currency to a real asset, to gold?
That doesn't solve the systemic problem.
It doesn't solve the systemic problem, but if enough of us did it as Muslims, we could solve the problem of how many Muslims are living below the poverty line in the Western world.
How?
More and more people are able to combat inflation. They can store wealth and they can grow their wealth.
Yeah.
by taking advantage.
It's already available, right? I mean, you can store your money in gold. I mean, now with digital gold, I mean, you can buy like not even 1 gram, 0 point something gram or something like that, right? And it's Sharia compliant and so on. But I do. The thing that I find fascinating is finance is not the answer to everything, right? You want to leave poverty, you need real economy, man. You need real jobs. Finance supports. The role of finance is always supporting and should be supporting and shouldn't be an economy of itself.
He says whilst we're sat in London and the UK, which is entirely propped up by financial services.
That's right. So how do you finance, right? What is finance?
We need to be producing real goods.
Yeah, it's
finance
about,
is meant to be the lubrication of the
yeah.
wheels.
For example, right? Yeah, for example, in the age of Prophet itself, with some sources say that his venture with Khadijah is a mudarabah, right? Technically a finance scheme.
That's
right?
true. Yeah. Khadijah radiallahu anha was financing Rasulullah's trade missions,
which is a real economy. So finance has to support the real economy. I think that's should be the immediate goal of Islamic finance, right? To support the economy, whatever you do.
So support businesses.
Yeah, support businesses, support whatever it is. Not just financialization for the sake of it, right? So if you try to find answers in finance,
you'll hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
In your opinion?
In my opinion. Yeah. The answer is in economy.
True.
How do you grow the economy? It's not only finance.
And that's why I'm a big advocate for the concepts of the Muslim pound or the Muslim dollar or whatever you call it.
Yeah,
where the circular economy, people invest into Muslim-owned businesses, they buy from Muslim goods and Muslim-produced things, and they support businesses.
Yeah, my take on that is, for example, zakat, right?
Yes.
You'd call it welfare tax. I don't see it like that because for me, right, the way I see, I mean, everyone have different experience and different knowledge, so have different opinions on it. Right? For me, it's a tax for not spending money, for accumulating assets.
Zakat is a tax for not spending money
and accumulating assets. Why? Because if you want the economy to grow, you have to keep spending money.
Okay, so you pay tax on assets which are sat idle.
Yes.
You pay zakat on assets that are sat idle in cash or gold or whatever it may be.
It's never on income, right?
But if you invested that money,
if you spend it, you buy things from other businesses.
Yeah.
You
buy homes, you buy property, you put it into your own business.
You to business, you buy other people food or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
You don't get tax or whatever.
Yeah. Very good point.
So, and there's an ayat in Quran. Can't remember the exact translation or the exact ayat, but basically the message is don't keep the wealth within yourself, within your group. Keep it circulating. Right, so
that's your take.
I don't have an answer, but it's always principle. Economics, Islamic economics, right? It's always principle.
It's not rules based.
It's not. The rules are fairness, Sharia compliant,
and perhaps the wisdom in that is that we're all going to be experiencing different things.
Yeah,
and I think often we get hung up that everything's in an interest based system anyway. So how is this really Islamic? How is this mortgage really Islamic? How is the savings account really Islamic?
Yeah.
But this is the situation we're dealing with.
This is the thing, right? Islamic might not be the right word. It is Sharia compliant. So Islamic is like a subjective thing that some people find it not fair, some people find it fair, and some people find it not Islamic. For example, let's say you want to buy a house, right? Basically now it's a mortgage. Some people might say the bank should give at 0%, right? But for the bank, it's not fair. They have a cost, they have people to pay.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a business and so on, right?
How's it going to work?
And it's over 20, 30 years. But I do agree that the system make the price of assets always going up, right? Because of the system and so on.
True.
Yeah, but that's one problem, right?
Yeah. Inflation is something we can deal with.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running out of time.
Yes.
But very quickly, what are your hopes for Kestrl? What do you want to achieve as an organization, and both in Malaysia and in this country?
Yeah, to be honest with you, when I started this, right, the key reason why I wanted to do this is for it to be a deed that allow me to stand before God and say that I've done something. That's all. So for my hope with Kestrl is that, so for us to do something to make a dent in the community, it could be something that become a start to something bigger, right? It could be another company take this on and become something bigger, and I would be happy if I know that we inspire or we allow that for that to happen. We don't know what's gonna happen. For example, let's say you say about the debt-based system and so on, right? Let's say we start this with the current account and so on, right? And we accumulate deposits that now allow for different models to be explored and so on. I don't know what it is, but it allows Muslim community all over in the West to accumulate assets, participating in the economy and so on. That's all I want. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right?
Okay, making a dent however we can. Beautiful message for a beautiful episode. Daeng, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me and hearing me rambling.
I think it will come out really well. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you for listening to the Muslim Money Talk podcast. If you like what you heard, then please subscribe to Muslim Money Talk wherever you might have been listening to this. Give us a like and share it with someone who you think might be interested. It really, really helps us out. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, and see you next time.